So this was a student who graduated maybe more than 10 years ago, and she's performing a pulmonary function. And the guy sitting in the body box is actually the respiratory therapist that does the pulmonary function. But they posed, which was nice. So inside that box, when you close that door, it contains the person inside of a box with controlled pressure. When you breathe and your lung expands, it expands inside this closed body box and will increase the pressure in the body box. Then the computer figures out, okay, when you breathe in and you expand this much, that means that there's this much volume in your lungs. So it's another way of measuring lung volumes. And it's supposed to be the most accurate way of measuring lung volumes. TLC does not stand for tender loving care. It's total lung capacity. Or thoracic gas volume is another name for total lung capacity. So if you have air that's so trapped that nothing's measuring it, your helium dilution isn't measuring it, your 100% oxygen, nitrogen washout isn't measuring it, the body box will detect it. It's very accurate for measuring lung compliance and very accurate for measuring airway resistance. Just grab my notes real quick. And it's almost the most accurate way to measure FRC in patients with airway obstruction. Okay, and then in general terms, we just call it the body box, but plethysmograph just means measure of changes in the volume of an organ. Do you need to know that? Body box is good enough. Measures lung volumes very accurately. And then this shows a person performing this study. It won't let me click on it. You can watch it at home? Okay. So when you close the door to the box, you also give the patient a mouthpiece to put in their mouth, and they're going to breathe in and out. And when they're breathing in and out, it's measuring flows and pressure. So it's called a pneumotachometer. So the body box is airtight. It maintains a set temperature. When the lungs expand, pressure and volume inside the box changes. And that's how the computer gets a measure of alveolar pressure. The pneumotachometer, it measures flow. I said pressures and flows. So the pneumotachometer measures flow. So we know that pneumo is air, so it measures airflow. The mouthpiece does have a pressure transducer separately from the pneumotachometer. So how the test is performed is the patient pants, and while panting, the shutter closes. So it's kind of like putting your hand over your mouth. So they're breathing, now they're not getting any air, but they keep breathing against that closed shutter for 3 to 4 breaths. The volume change in the box is recorded during this maneuver. The pressure change in the box is recorded. Pressure change at the mouth is recorded. So by applying Boyle's law to how volume and pressure are related to each other. The computer figures out what their thoracic gas volume is. Do you have to plug anything into Boyle's law? No. Do you have to know that in order for the body box to figure out thoracic volume, it applies Boyle's law? Yes. So you do have to know that Boyle's law is needed for that. More measurements that you get FRC. And it's considered more accurate than helium dilution or nitrogen washout. Once you get FRC, how do you figure out residual volume? Subtract ERV from FRC. And then it determines airway resistance. It's looking at delta P. It looks at the pressure at the mouth. And since it can detect alveolar pressure, it measures pressure in the alveoli. And when there's a big difference between the pressure at the mouth and the pressure in the alveoli, we know there's a lot of airway resistance. Somebody who has asthma has a lot of airway resistance. When they try to breathe in, they're going to have a big pressure difference and therefore high airway resistance. For looking at airway resistance, it gives you the units. Does that look familiar to you? Centimeters water per liter per second, looking at airway resistance. All right, so circle this. You need to know normal airway resistance. It's pretty low, isn't it? There's not that much airway resistance when we're breathing in. Airway resistance is pressure over flow. It's a pressure change between the mouth pressure, alveolar pressure. Resistance is produced by friction of gas molecules and contact with the airways. Have any of the first year students asked you, what is resistance? No? If they did ask you, how would you explain it? Okay. So you said everything but the word resistance. So you just took the word resistance out of. What would you say, Chris? The friction of the walls of the airway. Okay. So the friction of the walls of the airway or anything else that might get in the way of air moving down to the alveoli, I guess. Okay, very good. It's hard, isn't it? Yeah, some students will ask me, well, airway resistance, what the heck is that? And I try and I never come up with like the perfect way to describe it. We can tell you why it's high, but that's about it. Any questions?